Welcome back. We're still talking about parallel lines. We're still talking about transversals. Guys, I know you got fruit snacks in the back, and I know it's exciting, but I don't want to be interrupted by the fruit snack wars going on back there. We're talking about proving lines are parallel, okay? So if you look at our shape here, we do not know if L and M are parallel. They look parallel. They really do, but we do not have those symbols that remind us, right? So, if we had those little arrows here, then nothing would feel weird, but we don't have those arrows for sure, okay? Now, what we're going to do is see if we can prove that these two lines are parallel using the things that we know. So we're going to use 90% words that we already know, okay? Corresponding angles, alternate interior, alternate exterior, consecutive interior, consecutive exterior, all things that we've heard before, okay? Now, there's a word converse added on here, and for the most part, that it's like the law of corresponding angles, okay? This word converse, it's a little tricky because, you think, oh, converse. We just learned converse in the logic unit, and converse means to switch the order of the two things. Basically, the word converse on there is just what you need to put. It's like, this converse basically just means corresponding angles so they are parallel. That's what the converse means, right? It's just like your little stamp of approval, okay? Now, if two lines are cut by a transversal so that a pair of corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. None of that is new information. We already knew that corresponding angles are congruent. We already knew that, okay? Now, what we're doing today is instead of starting with parallel and then saying congruent, we're now going to start with congruent and then say parallel. That's kind of why converse is being used, because we're doing the questions in the backwards order, okay? So, here's our example. Give me two converse angles. If you look at this over here, I said converse, but I meant corresponding. Give me two corresponding numbers in our graph. What do you got? And there's, sure, 1 and 5 is excellent, right? So angle 1 and angle 5, those are converse. Oh my God, I keep saying that. Those are corresponding. Sorry, still warming up my geometry brain. I'm in algebra all morning. So let's just say if angle 1 is congruent with angle 5, then we know that two lines are parallel. What two lines would we know are parallel? Looking at our graph over here, at our little shape, our figure, L and M. So we say nice little cursive L, parallel, a nice little cursive M.
Oh my God, this is complicated.
All right, now, I promise you, if it's complicated, it's just because we haven't quite woken up or focused in yet. It is literally already things that we already know, okay? We already know that, just imagine this backwards, right? If I tell you that L and M are parallel, we know that 1 is the same as 5. That's corresponding. We've been doing that for like a week, right? What this question is saying is instead of starting L is parallel to M, that way I know 1 is congruent to 5, we're going backwards. Hey, if 1 is congruent to 5, I know these are parallel. Okay? Now, we're going to go through these a little bit. Trust me, it is not all that bad, okay? Alternate interior, so I'll help you out, okay? I will pick 4 and 6, okay? 4 and 6. When it comes to alternate interior, we know that alternate interior are congruent. We know that. We've always known that, okay? Now, The way it's normally set up is the question starts with, hey, these lines are parallel, and then we say, well, then they're congruent. Today it's backwards. We say, if 4 is congruent to 6, and then every end of the question is the same, then L is parallel to M. So this second part, then L's parallel to M, is the end of every single question, because it used to be the beginning of every single question, but we're just doing things backwards today. All right? And we can speed this up, right? I mean, the next one, alternate exterior angles. Give me 2 alternate exterior numbers. What do you say, 2 and? 2, not 2 and 5, but 2 and 8. If they're going to be exterior, then you need the one that's on the outside and the one that's on the outside. So let's go with 2 and 8. All right? And who can set up the equation for that? Or I say the equation. Who can set up the little sentence for us?
If 2 is congruent to 8, then L is parallel to M.
Exactly. If 2 is congruent to 8, then they're parallel. Did you talk with him, Ms. Bass? Let me, I'm kind of working on the notes, so if you guys come to an agreement, maybe push the day that you're on probation till tomorrow or something. Maybe we can do it like that. Consecutive interior angles. If we look at these consecutive interior angles, maybe I'll go with 3 and 6. Now, here's the difference. It doesn't say they're congruent, it says they're supplementary. And again, we already knew that. That is not new information. That's the same stuff we've been saying. It's not new. We can't say if 3 is congruent to 6 because they're not. Okay? We say if angle 3 plus angle 6 equals 180, because that's what it means to be supplementary. That's exactly what we were doing yesterday when we were looking at those equations and trying to solve those things out with a little bit of algebra. Then L is parallel to M. Well, you're not going to be able to go tomorrow because it took too long. Consecutive exterior angles. For consecutive exterior angles, if we pick them like 1 and 8, same thing. Let's just get through this. If 1 plus 8 equals 180, then they are parallel. Okay, I feel like we've almost been doing these definitions for too long, and we haven't done an actual question yet. Once we do an actual question, we'll realize it's basically the same thing we were doing yesterday, just in reverse order. Okay? So, the question from yesterday would have said that L and M are parallel, and it would have said, what is the angle up here in the top corner? And it wouldn't have told you 63, 63. It would have asked you, what is this angle? And the answer would have been, it's 63. But now, it's just a little bit backwards, and it tells you 63, 63. So, what we know is that we have, in this corner, alternate exterior angles. These are alternate exterior angles. When it comes to alternate exterior, are they supposed to be congruent or are they supposed to be supplementary? Alternate exterior angles are congruent. If they're congruent, then we're parallel. Are we congruent? I think we're looking good. Okay, so these angle, I guess we'll just say that the angles are congruent. And that means that these two lines are going to be parallel. And you know what? I'm just going to put my nice symbols on here. There we go. If you make a pass, make it to Miss Bass, so I don't have to do it, interrupt the class. Now for number 2, we can do these questions. All we need to look at is look at these two angles that we're talking about. Okay. Figure out how they're supposed to relate. I would say that this and this can relate with corresponding. Okay. I think that these are corresponding angles. Are corresponding angles supposed to be congruent, or are they supposed to be supplementary? Look up here. Corresponding angles are congruent. So we're in good shape. For some reason this kind of leaked into my box, which is annoying. There we go. Right? The angles are congruent. Oh, it's a vicious circle now. And so, if they're congruent, then that means these lines are going to be parallel. Line L and line M are parallel. All right, what do you think about number 3? Can you guarantee me that L and M are parallel? So, can you guarantee me if they're parallel or not? We need to look at the angles that we get, and we need to figure out how are these two things related. What's the relation here? These are consecutive exterior angles. And these consecutive exterior angles, are supposed to, consecutive exterior, they're supposed to be supplementary. So, if we have 48 plus 132 equals 180, is that the case? Is 48 plus 132 180? I think it's good. I think it works. And so, yes, we can guarantee that these are parallel lines. Because they're consecutive exteriors, because they add up to 180, we can guarantee that they should be parallel. Now, those first 3, they're a little bit snoozers. It's not that interesting. The bottom 3 is where it gets a little bit more interesting. Okay? So for number 4, look at these two angles. Okay? When it comes to these two angles, how do they relate to each other? They're vertical. Okay? Now, is the vertical setup listed in our 5 at the top? Corresponding, alternate, consecutive. Vertical is not. But we know, right? We know that vertical are supposed to be congruent. In fact, I think that's some of our favorite ones. That's kind of our go-to, is that verticals are congruent. But you need to be careful, okay? This is a very, very commonly missed one in geometry because we like these, but here's the deal. If I look at this, and I know that they're congruent, the issue is that both of these angles have nothing to do with line L, right? I mean, this is, 105 on line M, and this is 105 on line M. We don't have any information about L, and we're not allowed to do maybe a corresponding, or we're not allowed to do any of that because we also don't know if they're parallel. So here's what's up with these ones, okay? These are, not enough info to be parallel. All right, so not every question is just yes. Right? You don't just say, boom, sure, congruent, they're parallel. Not every time. Verticals specifically don't work because the issue is we have no information on line L whatsoever. We only have information on line M. Now 5 is alternate interior angles. Those are supposed to be alternate interiors are congruent. Okay, cool. These are supposed to be congruent. And are the angles congruent? Yes, they are. And so we can say that L and M are the same. These are, I said the same, but they're parallel is what I really should have said. Their slopes are the same. All right, last one. This is kind of the ultimate trick question where students are like, okay, I got it, Mr. Collier, this is easy, and they miss 6 every time, okay? So, how would you classify 6? You would say that these are on the same side of the transversal. You would say that these are consecutive, and you would say that these are interior. Thank you for getting the door. These are consecutive interior angles. Welcome back. And then you'd look at consecutive interior, and it says they should be supplementary. And so if you're looking at consecutive interior, and you're looking at these are supposed to be supplementary, the real question is, are these angles supplementary? Is 125 plus 65 equal to 180? No. This is a fail. All right? If you think about it, what is 125 plus 65? It is 190. Right? And that is a problem, okay? These are not parallel. So not every question is a guarantee that they're going to be parallel. You got to look at what you got, look at what they should be, and make sure that's what's going on. Now, we're not going to do every question on the back. I know that there's a lot going on here. We're just going to kind of get the hang for this, okay? What you're going to do is look for these two angles. I'm looking at angle 2 and angle 4. Here's angle 2. Here's angle 4. Okay? Now, it is given that these are congruent. And so if angle 2 and angle 4 are the same angle, which two lines can we guarantee are parallel? What do you think? It is line C is parallel to line D. Okay? Where does that come from? For 2, it's touching A and C. For 4, it's touching D and A. A is the transversal that has crossed the two lines. C and D are guaranteed to be parallel now. Okay? What converse did we use? Well, that's just taken straight from the list on the front. All right? It's either the corresponding converse or the alternate interior converse or the alternate exterior converse. You just slap converse on the end. These two are corresponding. So I'm going to write corresponding and then converse. Corresponding converse. Good to go. Okay, if it's 5 and 10, here's my 5, here's my 10. Okay, I can tell that 5 and 10 are alternate interior, and so I'm going to just put alternate interior converse. And then which two lines does that guarantee are parallel? 5 and 10 are transversed by this C that touches both of them. 5 is on A and 10 is on B. So we know that A is parallel to B. Let's do one like C, since that one looks supplementary. It says angle 1 and angle 13 add together to make 180. Here's my 1 in that top left. Here's my 13 in that bottom left. So I know that these are looking consecutive exteriors. I'm just going to write converse on the end because that's just what we do. And the consecutive exterior, well, they should be supplementary. That's what we got. They're supplementary. And so we've got 1 and 13. For some reason, I'm feeling like these parallel lines might be the thing that's going to confuse us most of all. So does anybody know which two lines should be parallel given this question? It is A and B. I mean, basically, you got a 50-50 shot. It's either going to be A, B, or it's going to be C, D. If you look at 1 and 13, the transversal that goes from 1 to 13 is not going to be the parallel. That's our transversal. That's C. And so A and B is the one that it should be. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you guys, I don't know, 1 minute, okay? Let's try D and E. I'll give you 1 minute to try this. One of them's congruent, one of them's supplementary. Timer's already going. Then we'll go through it. It's pretty much the whole thing. So once we're done with this, I mean, there's really nothing else on the notes. Let me finish the notes and then I'll accept it. Try to figure out how they relate, and then look at what two lines should be guaranteed to be parallel. Okay? All right, that's pretty much our minute. I don't want to stall too long. We're working with D. We're talking about 1 being congruent to 14, 1 and 14. Let's start with how these relate to each other. How does 1 relate to 14? Nice job. Alternate exterior. Heard a couple whispers here and there. That's perfect. Alternate exterior. Then you're just going to write converse. Remember, the only reason converse is there is because we're working these questions backwards, right? Instead of starting with the parallel, we're actually starting with the angles and moving backwards. Now, if we're talking about 1 and 14, which two lines can we guarantee are parallel? Because 1 is congruent to 14, we can guarantee that A is parallel to B. Again, that's a lot of A parallels to B, but there's really only two options there. It's either going to be CD or it's going to be AB. Okay, if I use my pens here, right, there's 1 going there, and there's 14 going there. These are the two lines that are going to be parallel. It's A and B. That wasn't a great demonstration. Last one, we've got angle 14 and angle 15. How do those relate to each other? Consecutive interior. That means they should be supplementary, and they are supplementary. So we're just going to write converse here. And then what two lines are these guaranteeing to be parallel? 14, 15 have a transversal of B, which means the other two lines are going to be parallel, which is C and D. All right, we did those two. Let's check out 11 and 16 just for a second here. You see 11 and 16. 11 and 16 is our favorite. 11 and 16 are vertical angles. And we know that vertical angles are congruent. But what's going on with F is that these are vertical angles, and vertical angles are bad when it comes to parallel. Okay? This is going to be a none, no good question for F. Vertical angles, they don't work. Okay? We don't like them. We don't like the way they're set up. Let's see one more. I'm going to go down to I, then we're going to end the notes. It says that 9 and 13 should add together to make 180. So if I look at my setup over here and I look at 9 and 13, I'll use a different color highlighter. 9 and 13, they're looking nice and linear. They're looking like a great supplementary pair, linear pair. And should they add up to make 180? Definitely. But these two angles are in the same little setup. They're in the same corner. They're at the same intersection. Okay? We can only do this if we have two angles from different intersections, right? So if I kind of think about this intersection as intersection A, well, we've already used ABCs, but we'll use capitals, I guess. We can use this one as B, and this one as C, and this one as D. We cannot do this if two angles come from the same intersection, okay? 9 and 13, that's a no good, okay? We cannot guarantee that anything is parallel because we're all coming from the same setup. Okay. At the bottom, we're not going to do any of these questions. We have a little bit of a more complicated setup here. Okay, we have a line, and we got 3 that are looking parallel. We got S and R, or it's actually S and T, which don't look very parallel. And same thing here with these setups. You're going to kind of consider the different intersections, consider how the things relate to each other, and if they're parallel, you're going to tell me which lines are parallel. Okay, that's it for the notes. Remember, you have the front of these notes. I took them on another piece of paper. You have the front of these notes. These are somewhat valuable information, but it's all information we've already taken on the notes before. Okay? Reminder that vertical angles can kind of mess you up. And the last thing, don't forget that we did this question where they're supposed to add up to make 180, but they did not. They added up to make 190, a little bit of a trick there, and that is also a fail. All right, that's it for proofs of parallel lines.